The Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison felt his stomach turn, as he always did after a long jump. On the main screen, the third planet appeared as a small blue dot, but even from this distance, they could see something was terribly wrong. "My God," whispered Dr. Amy Foster at the science station. "Look at that star." The system's sun was huge and angry red, much larger than it should be. Massive flames shot out from its surface, reaching toward the planets like grasping fingers. The star was dying, and in its death, it was trying to consume everything around it. "How long do they have?" Jake asked, though he was afraid to hear. The answer: Ben Taylor, the chief science officer, worked quickly at his instruments. "The stellar expansion is accelerating faster than we thought, Captain. I estimate 48 hours before the planet becomes uninhabitable. Maybe less. 48 hours. Jake felt the weight of that knowledge settle on his shoulders. An entire civilization had 2 days left to live. "Danny, are you still receiving their signal?" Communications Officer Danny Torres nodded grimly. "Yes, Captain, but it's much weaker now. The solar radiation is interfering with their equipment. Take us closer. We need to get a better look at what we're dealing with." As the Defiant moved toward the planet, the details became clearer and more heartbreaking. The world was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, but massive storms covered half the surface. The solar flares from the dying star were already causing terrible damage. "I'm reading cities, Captain," Ben Taylor reported. "Lots of them. This is a highly advanced civilization." Dr. Foster leaned forward at her station. "I'm detecting some kind of organic technology. Their buildings and vehicles seem to be grown, rather than built. It's like they use living materials for everything." "Living materials?" Jake asked. "Yes, Captain. Their technology appears to be based on biology rather than metal and electronics like ours. It's fascinating, but also fragile. The radiation from the star is killing their technology along with everything else." Lisa Park spoke up from the engineering station. "Captain, I'm reading massive population centers. If Ben's estimates are right, we're looking at over 12 million beings down there." 12 million! Jake had commanded ships with crews of thousands. But 12 million people was beyond anything he could imagine. How could one small exploration ship possibly help so many? "Danny, can you establish communication with them?" "I'm trying, Captain." "The interference is getting worse, but I think I can get through." For the next hour, they worked to establish clear communication with the planet. Dr. Foster had created a more complex, mathematical language that both species could understand. Finally, Danny managed to get a clear signal through. The reply came immediately. Even through the static and translation difficulties, they could hear the desperate hope in the alien voice. "Captain," Dr. Foster said, her voice shaking, "I think I understand what they're saying. They call themselves the Zephyrians. Their leader is asking if we can help them escape their dying world." Jake took a deep breath. "Tell them we want to help. Ask them about their population and their needs." The conversation that followed was slow and difficult, but gradually they learned more about the Zephyrians. They were an insect-like species, but they had built a peaceful civilization focused on growing and nurturing life. They had never developed space travel because they had never needed it. Their world had been perfect for millions of years. "There, sending us images, Captain," Danny reported. On the main screen, pictures appeared of the Zephyrian civilization. The aliens looked like large, graceful insects with multiple arms and beautiful wings. Their cities were living works of art, with buildings that looked like giant flowers and trees. Everything was designed to work with nature, not against it. But the recent images showed the destruction. The solar flares had killed many of their living buildings. Food plants were dying. The Zephyrians were starving and had no way to escape. Their world. Ask them about their leadership. Jake ordered Dr. Foster work with Danny to translate the question. The answer came back quickly. They have a queen mother who speaks for all of them. She's very old and very wise. She's the one who ordered the distress signal to be sent. Can we speak to her directly? There was a pause. Then the alien signal changed. A new voice came through, older and more tired than the first, but also stronger and more determined. Captain, I think this is their queen mother, Dr. Foster said. She's asking who we are and why we came. Jake stepped forward. Tell her we are humans from a world called Earth. We heard their call for help and came as quickly as we could. The translation took several minutes. When the Queen Mother's reply came back, Dr. Foster began to cry. She says they have been calling for help for months. No one answered. She had given up hope that anyone in the universe cared about them. She wants to know if we can really help them. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his answer. The Defiant was designed for exploration, not rescue. They had supplies for 50 people, not 12 million aliens. Ask her about their needs. What do they need to survive? The Queen Mother's answer was long and complex. Dr. Foster worked hard to translate it all. She says they need a specific mixture of gases to breathe. It's similar to our air, but with different chemicals. They eat a special food that they grow themselves, but it won't grow on other worlds without their soil. The young ones are especially fragile and need constant care. Lisa Park was already working on the problem. Captain, our life support systems might be able to create the right air mixture for them. But feeding 12 million aliens, that's impossible with what we have. Ben Taylor looked up from his instruments. Captain, there's something else. The Queen Mother is sending more detailed information. 3 million of their population are younglings who cannot survive in space without special protection. 3 million children. Jake felt his heart break a little more. Danny, ask the Queen Mother if their people can survive in spacesuits or protective equipment. The answer came back quickly. She says their people have never been in space. They don't have suits or ships. Everything they have is biological and tied to their planet. Jake walked to the main window and stared down at the dying world. 12 million people were down there, waiting for him to somehow save them. His ship could maybe carry a few hundred at most, and even that would be dangerous. Captain, Lisa Park said quietly, I might have an idea. What if we could adapt their biological technology to work with our mechanical systems? If we could create hybrid life support systems, ... that's impossible, Ben Taylor said. We don't understand their technology at all. But they do, Lisa replied. What if we brought some of their engineers aboard? If we work together, we might be able to modify our ship to carry more people. Dr. Foster looked up from her translation work. Captain, the Queen Mother is asking if we can take at least some of their people to safety. She says even if most of them die, some should survive to carry on their culture. Jake felt the weight of command heavier than ever before. The Queen Mother was asking him to choose who lived and who died. It was an impossible choice. Tell the Queen Mother that we will not leave anyone behind. We will find a way to save all of them. Dr. Foster stared at him. Captain, how can we possibly? I don't know yet, Jake said firmly. But we're going to try. Danny, send a message to Earth. Tell them we need the entire fleet here as soon as possible. Tell them this is a rescue mission for 12 million people. Captain, Sam Chun said from the navigation station, even if Earth sends every ship they have, it will take weeks for them to get here. These people have 2 days. Jake nodded. Then we'll have to hold them for 2 days. Lisa, I want you to work with their engineers. Dr. Foster, keep translating. Ben, I need you to figure out how to extend this planet's life as long as possible. Captain, what you're suggesting is impossible, Ben said. Maybe, Jake replied, but we're going to try anyway. Danny, tell the Queen Mother that we're coming down to meet her. We're going to work together to save her people. As the Defiant moved into orbit around the dying world, Jake Morrison looked at his crew with pride. They were scared, but they were ready to do whatever it took to help. They were about to attempt the impossible, and they all knew it. But sometimes, Jake thought, impossible things happen when people refuse to give up. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Defiant, watching the stars through the main window. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support life. It was quiet work, but Jake liked it that way. After 20 years in the space service, he preferred the peaceful missions to the dangerous ones. The bridge was small but well designed. Jake could see everything from his captain's chair in the gear. Center, to his left sat Lisa Park, the chief engineer. She was young but brilliant, always finding new ways to make the ship run better. At the communication station, Danny Torres was monitoring radio signals from nearby space. Dr. Amy Foster sat at the science station, studying data from the sensors. "Captain, we're coming up on the Kepler 442 system," announced Sam Chun from the navigation station. "Should we do a full scan?" Jake nodded. "Yes, let's take a look. Any signs of life?" Dr. Foster checked her instruments. "The third planet shows some interesting readings. It has water and an atmosphere, but something seems wrong. The star is much brighter than it should be." Lisa Park looked up from her engineering console. "The star readings are strange, Captain. It looks like it's getting ready to expand." "That's not good for any planets nearby," Jake frowned. A star expansion meant death for any life in the system. "How long do we have?" "Hard to say without getting closer," Lisa replied. "Maybe days, maybe weeks." Danny Torres suddenly sat up straight. At his station, "Captain, I'm picking up something. It's very weak, but it's definitely artificial." "What kind of signal?" Jake asked, moving closer to the communication station. "It's repeating every few minutes. Same pattern each time. But it's not in any language I know." Danny adjusted his controls, and a soft sound filled the bridge. It was like music, but sad and desperate. Dr. Foster quickly moved to help Danny. "Let me run it through the computer. Maybe we can figure out what it means." For the next hour, they worked together while Jake watched. The signal was definitely made by intelligent beings, not natural space phenomena. It came from the third planet, the one with water and atmosphere. "Captain," Dr. Foster said finally, "I think this is a distress call." Jake's heart sank. A distress call from a dying world. "Are you sure?" The mathematical patterns repeat in a way that suggests urgency, and there are numbers that might be coordinates or population counts. It's definitely asking for help. Lisa Park spoke up from her station. "Captain, if that star expands, everything on that planet will be destroyed. The radiation alone would kill any life there." Jake looked around at his crew. The Defiant was an exploration ship, not a rescue vessel. They had a crew of only 50 people and limited supplies. Their job was to explore and report back to Earth, not to get involved in alien problems. "How far are we from Earth?" Jake asked Sam Chun. "About 6 months at top speed, Captain. Even with quantum communication, it would take weeks to get instructions." From headquarters, Danny Torres spoke up. "Captain, the signal is getting weaker. Whatever is sending, it won't last much longer." Jake walked to the main window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, intelligent beings were crying out for help. They had been sending their desperate message into space, hoping someone would hear them and care enough to help. "Dr. Foster, can you tell how many beings might be on that planet?" Amy Foster worked at her computer for several minutes. "Based on the signal patterns, I estimate at least several million. Maybe more." "Several million lives." Jake thought about his own family back on Earth, his wife and 2 children. If Earth was dying and aliens received their distress call, he would want them to at least try to help. "Captain," Lisa Park said quietly, "regulations say we should report this to Earth and wait for orders." Jake knew she was right. Admiral Kate Sullivan back at headquarters would want them to follow proper procedures. First contact with alien life was too important to handle without permission from Earth. But Jake also knew that by the time Earth could send help, there might be nothing left to save. Danny, can you boost the signal? I want to try to communicate with them. I can try, Captain, but we don't know their language. Dr. Foster, you're our language expert. Can you put together a simple message? Something that shows we heard them and we want to help. Amy Foster nodded eagerly. I can use mathematics and basic concepts. If they're intelligent enough to build radio transmitters, they'll understand mathematics. For the next 2 hours, they worked on a message. Dr. Foster created a simple mathematical sequence that showed they understood the alien signal. Then, she added coordinates showing the Defiant's position and a time sequence suggesting they were coming to help Dot when Danny transmitted the message. They all held their breath. Would the aliens understand? Would they even receive it? 20 minutes later, the alien signal changed. Instead of the same sad, desperate pattern, it became faster and more complex. Even without understanding the language, they could hear the excitement and hope in it. They know we're here, Dr. Foster said with tears in her eyes. They know someone heard their call for help. Jake made his decision. Sam, set course for the third planet. Lisa, I want you to check all our systems. If we're going to help these people, we need to be ready for anything. Captain, Lisa said carefully, we don't know what we're getting into. They could be dangerous. Their planet is dying, Lisa. Would dangerous beings spend their last days calling for help instead of building weapons? Lisa nodded slowly. You're right, Captain. I'll get the ship ready. As the Defiant changed course toward the alien world, Jake opened the communication channel to Earth. He recorded a message explaining what they had found and what they planned to do. He knew Admiral Sullivan would not be happy with his decision to act without orders, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the exploration ship Defiant. We have discovered intelligent alien life in the Kepler 442 system. Their planet is in immediate danger from stellar expansion, and they are requesting help. We are the only ship in range to assist them. I am taking the Defiant to investigate and provide whatever aid we can. We will report back as soon as possible. He ended the transmission and sent it toward Earth. In a few weeks, Admiral Sullivan would receive it, but by then, everything would be decided one way or another. Danny Torres looked up from his station. Captain, I'm getting clearer readings from the planet now. The population is definitely in the millions, and Captain ... they're not like us. The biological readings suggest they're very different from humans. Jake nodded. They were about to make first contact with an alien species, and they will be doing it during the worst crisis those aliens had ever faced. How long until we reach the planet? Jake asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, Sam Chum replied. 8 hours to prepare for something no human had ever done before. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared but determined. They had all volunteered for exploration duty because they wanted to discover new things and help expand human knowledge. Now, they had a chance to do something more important than just discovery. They had a chance to save an entire civilization. All right, everyone. We have work to do. Dr. Foster, keep working on communication. Lisa, I want full diagnostics on all systems. Danny, monitor that signal and let me know if anything changes. Sam, plot the safest course to the planet. As his crew worked around him, Jake stared out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, millions of intelligent beings were waiting and hoping that the strangers who had answered their call would somehow be able to help them. Jake Morrison had no idea how they would do it, but he was determined to try. Commander Rick Torres stepped out of his new ship's cockpit, still amazed by what he had just experienced. The vessel looked like nothing humanity had ever built before. It was sleek and dark, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in motion, but it was what the ship could do that truly impressed him. How did it feel? Asked Dr. Ellen Foster, looking up from her tablet where she had been recording flight data. Ellen was one of the lead scientists working on the human Umbro technology integration project, and she had been studying the new ships for months. Like flying through a dream, Rick replied, pulling off his helmet. One moment I was there, the next I was somewhere else entirely. The phase shift technology is incredible. 6 months had passed since the alliance with the Umbro was officially formed, and the joint research stations throughout the solar system were working around the clock. The largest facility was built on one of Jupiter's moons, where teams of human engineers and Umbro advisors labored to create new weapons and defenses. Rick walked over to where his squadron was gathered, looking at their new ships with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. These were the first Shadow-class vessels, hybrid ships that combined human engineering with Umbro technology. They were smaller and faster than traditional human warships, but their real advantage was their ability to become nearly invisible. "All right, people, listen up," Rick called to his pilots. "These ships are like nothing we've ever flown before. The dark matter shields don't just protect us, they actually bend space around the ship. When we activate phase shift mode, we exist, partially outside normal reality." Lieutenant Sarah Kim raised her hand. "Sir, what does that mean exactly?" Rick smiled, remembering his own confusion when the Umbro first explained the technology. "It means we can pass through solid objects, become invisible to most sensors, and strike from angles the enemy won't expect. But it also means we have to learn entirely new ways of thinking about combat." The training had been intense. Human pilots had to learn to work with Umbro navigation systems that responded to thought as much as touch. The alien technology was so advanced that it seemed almost magical, but Rick was beginning to understand the science behind it. Dr. Foster approached the group, her eyes bright with excitement. "Rick, I just received word from the main research station. Dr. Webb has made another breakthrough." They walked together to the communications center, where a large screen showed Dr. Marcus Webb's tired but triumphant face. Behind him, Rick could see the busy laboratory where some of humanity's best scientists worked alongside their Umbro partners. "Ellen, Rick, you need to see this," Webb said without preamble. "We finally figured out how the Devourers actually work." The screen changed to show a complex diagram that hurt Rick's eyes to look at directly. Webb's voice continued as the image shifted and rotated. "The Devourers aren't just eating matter and energy. They're consuming the fundamental structure of reality itself. When they destroy a star, they're actually unmaking it, erasing it from existence." Ellen leaned forward, fascinated. "That explains why conventional weapons have no effect on them. You can't destroy something that exists outside normal physics." "Exactly," Webb confirmed. "But here's the important part. The process they use has a weakness. When they unmake something, they have to temporarily make themselves vulnerable to the same forces they're using." Rick didn't pretend to understand the science, but he grasped the implications. "You're saying we can hurt them, but only at the exact moment they're attacking?" "That's right. And the Umbro technology might be the key. Their phase shift capabilities could allow our ships to exist in the same twisted space where the Devourers operate." The conversation was interrupted by an alarm. Rick looked up to see Admiral Hayes entering the communications center, her face grim with worry. "We just received a long-range sensor reading," she announced. "The Devourers are moving faster than we expected. Our best estimates now give us maybe 20 years before they reach our galaxy." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. 20 years seemed like a long time, but Rick knew it wasn't nearly enough to prepare for a threat of this magnitude. Dr. Foster spoke first. "We need to accelerate all our programs. The Shadow-class ships, the new weapons, the defense systems, everything." Admiral Hayes nodded. "That's why I'm here. We're implementing the Shadow Touch program immediately." Rick had heard rumors about this program, but didn't know the details. "What exactly does that involve?" "Volunteers will undergo a procedure that allows them to interface directly with Umbro technology," Hayes explained. It's similar to what Captain Morrison experienced during first contact, but more controlled and permanent. The idea was both fascinating and terrifying. Rick had seen how the telepathic contact affected Morrison, the way it changed him. The captain was still human, but there was something different about him now, as if he existed partially in both. "Worlds, I volunteer," Rick said without hesitation. Hayes smiled grimly. "I was hoping you would say that. You'll be leading the first Shadow Touch squadron." Over the following weeks, Rick and 12 other volunteers underwent the transformation process. It was conducted aboard the dark ship itself, in chambers filled with the strange, shifting light that seemed to be the Umbral's natural environment. The procedure was unlike anything Rick had ever experienced. He felt the alien technology merging with his nervous system, creating new pathways in his brain that allowed him to communicate directly with Umbral systems. When it was over, he could sense the dark matter fields around him and feel the flow of energy through space itself. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Foster when Rick emerged from the transformation chamber. Rick paused, trying to find words for the experience. "Different. Like I can see more of the universe than before." "It's overwhelming, but also incredible." The other volunteers had similar reactions. They were still human, but they had gained abilities that no human had ever possessed. They could sense energy patterns invisible to normal people, communicate telepathically with Umbral technology, and most importantly, they could pilot the Shadow-class ships with an intuitive understanding that took months for regular pilots to develop. Training with the new abilities was challenging. Former Marine Colonel Pete Russell, who had also volunteered for the program, worked with the Shadow Touch to develop new combat techniques. Pete was a tough, experienced soldier who adapted quickly to the alien technology. "The key is not to fight the Umbral systems," Pete explained during one training session. "You have to work with them, become part of them. Think of it as a dance, not a wrestling match." Rick found that the Shadow Touch could work together in ways that seemed almost supernatural. They could coordinate their movements without speaking, share sensory information instantly, and react to threats before they became visible to normal sensors. But the transformation came with costs. Some volunteers experienced headaches and disorientation as their brains adapted to the new neural pathways. Others reported strange dreams filled with images of distant galaxies and alien thoughts. Dr. Foster monitored all the Shadow Touch carefully, documenting the changes and looking for potential problems. "The integration appears to be stable," she reported to Admiral Hayes, "but we're in uncharted territory here. We don't know what the long-term effects might be." Meanwhile, construction accelerated on the new defense systems. Space stations equipped with dark matter cannons were built at strategic points throughout the solar system. These weapons could fire concentrated beams of twisted space-time that could theoretically damage the Devourers. The joint research teams also developed new types of sensors that could detect the reality distortions the Devourers created when they moved through space. Early warning systems were established at the edge of the galaxy, automated stations that would alert Earth the moment the enemy appeared. But perhaps the most important development was the change in humanity itself, the cooperation required for the joint projects was breaking down barriers that had existed for centuries. Scientists from former enemy nations worked side by side, sharing knowledge freely. Military forces that had once threatened each other now trained together for a common purpose. Rick noticed this change most clearly in his own squadron. His pilots came from a dozen different countries and had grown up speaking different languages. But when they flew together in their Shadow-class ships, national boundaries seemed meaningless. They were no longer just American or Chinese or Russian pilots. They were human pilots, defending their entire species. The Umbral seemed pleased by this development. Shadewalker Between Stars had told Admiral Hayes that one of humanity's greatest strengths was their ability to unite against external threats. The Devourers had destroyed many civilizations by turning them against themselves. But humanity seemed to be growing stronger under pressure. as Rick stood on the observation deck of the Jupiter station, watching human and Umbral ships conducting joint exercises. He felt a mixture of pride and determination. They still had years of preparation ahead of them, and the enemy they would face was more dangerous than anything humanity had ever encountered. Admiral Susan Hayes stood on the bridge of the battleship Defender, watching the dark alien ship through the main view screen. 2 weeks had passed since Captain Morrison's urgent transmission reached Earth Command, and the political chaos that followed had been intense. Half the government wanted to attack the alien vessel immediately, while the other half demanded more information before making any decisions. Susan had been chosen to lead the contact mission because of her reputation for level-headed thinking and her experience with first contact protocols. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, a team of scientists and military officers prepared for what could be the most important meeting in human history. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the horizon's edge," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Miller. "Captain Morrison is requesting permission to facilitate the meeting." Susan nodded, keeping her expression calm despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Put him through." Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Admiral Hayes, thank you for coming. The Umbral are ready to meet with you, but they want to demonstrate their technology first. They believe it will help convince your government that the threat is real." "What kind of demonstration?" Susan asked, though she was already afraid of the answer. "They're going to temporarily cloak Earth's moon," Jake replied. "Just for 60 seconds to show what their technology can do. They want to prove they could have attacked us at any time if that had been their intention." Susan felt her blood run cold. The idea that aliens could make the moon disappear, even briefly, was terrifying. But she also understood the logic behind it. If the Umbral wanted to demonstrate their peaceful intentions while showing their power, this would certainly accomplish both goals. "When?" she asked. "In approximately 10 minutes, Jake said. "They wanted to give you time to prepare your instruments and notify Earth Command." Susan immediately contacted Earth, warning them about the demonstration. Within minutes, every telescope and sensor on the planet was aimed at the moon. Scientists and military officials gathered in command centers around the world, waiting to see if the aliens would actually do what they claimed at exactly the promised time. The moon vanished. For 60 seconds, the night sky was empty where Earth's companion had hung for billions of years. No light reflected from its surface. No gravitational effects could be measured. It was as if the moon had simply stopped existing. Then, as suddenly as it had disappeared, it returned unchanged and undamaged. Susan's communication system immediately began buzzing with panic calls from Earth Command. The demonstration had been successful, perhaps too successful. The world's leaders were now truly terrified of what the aliens might be capable of. "Admiral," her science officer, Dr. Marcus Webb, said in a shaky voice, "the energy readings during that demonstration were incredible. Whatever technology they use, it's far beyond anything we understand." Susan took a deep breath and made her decision. "Captain Morrison, tell the Umbral we're ready to meet." The boarding process was unlike anything Susan had experienced. The alien ship's hull opened to receive their shuttle, and they found themselves in corridors that seemed to shift and change around them. Dr. Webb was fascinated by the technology, constantly taking readings and making notes about the materials and energy signatures. "This is incredible," he whispered to Susan as they walked. "The walls appear to be made of some kind of programmable matter that can change its properties at will, and the energy source powering all this must be enormous." They were led to a large chamber where several Umbral waited for them. Susan had read Morrison's reports, but seeing the aliens in person was still shocking. They looked like living shadows given form, their bodies shifting between solid and ethereal states. Shade dash Walker dash between dash stars stepped forward, and Susan felt the alien's presence touch her mind. The telepathic contact was gentler than she had expected, more like a whisper than the overwhelming flood of images Morrison had described. "Welcome, Admiral Hayes," the alien said directly into her thoughts. "We are grateful that your leaders have chosen to listen rather than attack." Susan tried to project her thoughts back, unsure if she was doing it correctly. "We're here to learn. Captain Morrison has told us about the threat you described." The Umbral leader's response came with a wave of sadness that nearly brought tears to Susan's eyes. "We have watched the Devourers consume entire galaxies. We know their methods, their weaknesses, their terrible hunger. Your species cannot face them alone. What are you offering?" Susan asked Dot in answer. The chamber around them began to change. The walls became transparent, showing the vast interior of the alien ship. Susan gasped as she saw technology that defied everything she thought she knew about physics. Engines that seemed to bend space itself, weapons that fired concentrated dark matter, and shields that could make objects phase partially out of reality. "We offer you our knowledge, our technology, our experience," Shade Walker Between Stars explained. "But more than that, we offer you hope. Together, our species might survive what is coming." Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with excitement as he observed the alien technology. "Admiral, if we could understand even a fraction of what they're showing us, it would advance human science by centuries." But Susan was thinking about the political implications. "What do you want in return?" The alien's answer was simple, but profound: an alliance. A commitment to fight together against the Devourers when they arrive. And most importantly, a promise that humanity will not give up hope, no matter how desperate the situation becomes. Over the following hours, Susan and her team were given a comprehensive briefing on the Devourer threat. They learned that the enemy wasn't just powerful, but intelligent and adaptable. Each galaxy they consumed made them stronger and more cunning. "How long do we have?" Susan asked. The alien showed her star charts and energy readings that meant nothing to her, but caused Dr. Webb to grow pale. "Based on their current rate of movement," he translated, "we have maybe 30 to 40 years before we reach the outer edge of our galaxy." Susan felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "That's not much time to prepare for a war of this magnitude," the Umbral leader agreed. "Time is short, but not impossible. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. With our technology and your innovation, we might create weapons and defenses that even the Devourers cannot overcome." When Susan returned to Earth, she found a world divided. The moon demonstration had convinced most people that the alien threat was real, but it had also terrified them. Some governments wanted to accept the Umbral Alliance immediately, while others argued that the aliens themselves might be the real threat. President Helen Carter called an emergency session of the United Nations, where Susan presented everything she had learned. The debate was intense and sometimes heated, with delegates arguing late into the night about humanity's response. "How do we know these aliens aren't lying?" demanded the Chinese representative. "How do we know they're not the real invaders, trying to trick us into lowering our defenses?" Susan had expected this question. Because if they wanted to conquer us, they wouldn't need to trick us. You saw what they did to the moon. They could have destroyed every major city on Earth instead of just demonstrating their power. The Russian delegate raised another concern. "What if accepting their help makes us dependent on them? What if they're trying to control us?" "Then we'll be controlled but alive," Susan replied bluntly. "The alternative is extinction." The debate continued for days, but eventually a consensus emerged. The threat was too great to ignore, and the potential benefits of the alliance outweighed the risks. By a narrow margin, the United Nations voted to accept the Umbral offer of alliance, but not everyone was convinced. Several smaller nations refused to participate, claiming the whole situation was a hoax designed to create a world government. Some religious groups declared the aliens to be demons, while others saw them as angels sent to test humanity's faith. Despite the opposition, preparation began immediately. Joint research stations were established throughout the solar system, where human scientists worked alongside Umbral advisors to understand the alien technology. The learning curve was steep, but Dr. Webb and his team made rapid progress. The key is their manipulation of dark matter, Webb explained to Susan during one of their progress meetings. They can use it to create shields that exist partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to penetrate with conventional weapons. Susan nodded, but she was thinking about the bigger picture. Technology alone wouldn't be enough to win this war. They needed to change the way humans thought about warfare, about cooperation, about their place in the universe. The Umbral had warned that the Devourers would try to turn humanity against itself, to create fear and division. That would make them easier to defeat. Susan could already see signs of this happening, as some groups blamed the aliens for bringing danger to Earth, but she also saw signs of hope. Scientists from different countries were working together more closely than ever before. Military commanders were sharing information and resources without regard for national boundaries. For the first time in human history, the entire species was. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the conference room aboard the Horizon's Edge, staring at the data they had collected from their encounter with the Umbral. 3 days had passed since their first contact with the alien beings, and Jake's mind was still reeling from everything he had learned. Ben Parker paced nervously by the window, while Dr. Kate Sullivan reviewed her scanner readings for the 100th time. "Are you sure about what you experienced, Captain?" Amy Walsh asked, looking up from her analysis of the telepathic communication logs. "The neural patterns we recorded are unlike anything in our scientific databases." Jake rubbed his temples, trying to ease the headache that had been building since his contact with Shade Walker Between Stars. "I'm sure, Amy, what I saw in those mental images was real. The Umbral aren't just refugees. They're survivors of something terrible." The ship's communication system chimed, and Tony Blake's voice came through the speakers. "Captain, we're receiving." Another signal from the dark ship. "The pulse patterns are different this time. More complex?" Jake stood up immediately. "Put it through to the conference room?" The lights dimmed, and the room filled with a low humming sound. Jake felt the familiar touch of the alien mind, but this time it was stronger, more urgent. Images began to flood his consciousness, and he gripped the edge of the table as the visions overwhelmed him. He saw a galaxy far from their own, filled with billions of stars and countless worlds teeming with life. Advanced civilizations had built magnificent cities that floated among the stars, connected by streams of pure energy. It was a paradise beyond human imagination, a place where different species lived in harmony and shared knowledge freely. Then the darkness came. Jake watched in horror as the Devourers arrived at the edge of the galaxy. They weren't ships in any sense that humans would understand. They were living voids, spaces where reality itself had been torn away. As they moved through space, they consumed everything in their path. Stars didn't just die, they were erased completely, leaving behind regions where even light could not exist. The civilizations of that galaxy tried to fight back. Jake saw massive fleets of ships attacking the Devourers with weapons that could destroy entire planets. But nothing worked. The more energy they threw at the creatures, the stronger the Devourers became. They fed on the life force of stars, the thoughts of intelligent beings, the very fabric of space and time. "Captain, your vital signs are spiking," Kate said, her voice filled with concern. "Maybe you should break the connection." Jake shook his head, knowing he needed to see everything. The images continued, showing him the final days of the Umbral's home galaxy. Entire star systems were being consumed at an accelerating rate. The Devourers had grown so powerful that they could drain a sun in a matter of hours, leaving behind nothing but empty space. The surviving species tried to evacuate, but there was nowhere to run. The Devourers were everywhere, spreading like a plague across the galaxy. Jake saw the Umbral making their desperate escape, their dark ships powered by the last energy they could gather from dying stars. But the worst part was yet to come. The Devourers weren't just destroying the galaxy, They were learning from it. Each world they consumed gave them new knowledge, new abilities. They had absorbed the memories and skills of thousands of different species, making them smarter and more dangerous with each victory. The mental connection suddenly intensified, and Jake found himself face to face with Shade Walker between stars. The alien being's form was more solid now, more defined, as if the urgency of their situation had given it greater focus. "Your species has been noticed," the Umbro leader said directly into Jake's mind. "The Devourers have learned of your expansion into the stars. They find your adaptability and resilience both threatening and appealing." Jake tried to form coherent thoughts to respond. "How long do we have?" The answer came not in words but in images. Jake saw the Devourers moving through the dark spaces between galaxies, following the energy trail left by the Umbro's escape. They were still far away, but they were coming steadily. Closer to the Milky Way. Decades, perhaps less, Shade Walker between stars replied. "They move faster now than when they destroyed our home. Each galaxy they consume makes them stronger, more efficient. What do they want with us?" Jake asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "Your species is unique," the alien explained. "Most civilizations become comfortable with their technology and stop growing. But humans continue to adapt, to find new solutions to impossible problems. This makes you dangerous to the Devourers, but also valuable." More images flowed through Jake's mind. He saw human colonies spreading across the galaxy, watched as Earth's explorers pushed into unknown regions of space. But he also saw something else, something that made his blood run cold. The Devourers weren't just tracking the Umbro. They were studying humanity from a distance, learning about human strengths and weaknesses. They had been watching you for some time. Shade Walker between stars continued. "Your wars, your expansion, your technology. They know about your weapons, your defenses, your military strategies. When they arrive, they will be prepared." Jake felt his heart pounding as the full scope of the threat became clear. Humanity wasn't just facing an alien invasion. They were about to fight an enemy that had already studied them, an enemy that had destroyed entire galaxies and grown stronger with each victory. "How can we possibly fight something like that?" Jake asked, his thoughts filled with despair. Umbro leader's response carried a hint of hope. "That is why we have waited here, why we have revealed ourselves to you. Alone, neither of our species can survive what is coming. But together, we might have a chance." The images changed, showing Jake glimpses of Umbro technology. He saw ships that could phase in and out of normal space, weapons that could manipulate dark matter, and shields that could bend reality itself. But more importantly, he saw the knowledge and experience of a species that had fought the Devourers. "Before Dot, we offer you our technology, our knowledge, our experience," the alien said. "In return, we ask for your help in preparing for the war that is coming. Your species has something we lost long ago, something the Devourers fear." "What's that?" Jake asked. Hope came the simple reply. "The ability to believe that impossible things can be accomplished. The Devourers have consumed so many galaxies that they believe victory is inevitable. But humans have a history of proving that the impossible is merely difficult." Jake felt the mental connection beginning to fade. But Shade Walker between stars had one more message to share. The preparation must begin immediately. Your military leaders, your scientists, your political figures, they must all understand what is coming. The Devourers will not announce their arrival. They will simply begin consuming your outer worlds, growing stronger with each victory. Will you help us convince them?" Jake asked. "We will do what we can," the alien replied. "But much depends on your species' willingness to accept help from strangers. Some humans will see us as another threat rather than as allies." The connection ended abruptly, leaving Jake gasping in the conference room. His team gathered around him, their faces filled with concern and questions. "What did you see?" Kate asked, her scanner beeping as she checked his vital signs. Jake looked at each of his crew members. knowing that their lives had just changed forever. We need to contact Earth Command immediately. Not just a routine report, but a priority. One transmission to the highest levels of government. What should we tell them? Ben asked. Jake stood up slowly, his legs still shaky from the mental contact. We tell them that humanity is about to face a war for the survival of our entire galaxy, and that we found allies who are offering to help us prepare for a fight we can't possibly win alone. Amy frowned as she studied her instruments. Captain, some of the energy readings from the alien ship are off the charts. Whatever technology they're offering, it's far beyond anything we've ever seen. Jake nodded grimly. That's probably the only thing that's going to keep us alive. The Devourers have destroyed civilizations that were thousands of years ahead of us. If we're going to survive this, we need every advantage we can get. As the crew prepared the urgent transmission to Earth, Jake looked out at the dark ship floating among the asteroids. Somewhere inside that vessel were beings who had watched their entire galaxy die, who had fled across the emptiness between stars, carrying the knowledge of countless destroyed worlds. Now they were offering to share that knowledge with humanity, to help prepare for a war that would determine the fate of everything they held dear. The question was whether Earth would be ready to accept help from aliens, or whether fear and suspicion would doom them all to the same fate that had befallen the Umbro's home galaxy.